Grace and peace. Welcome to Judah's Roar Domestic Violence Awareness Initiative YouTube channel. I'm your host, Apostle Cheryl. I'm going to give you a few seconds before we get started to check down here below the video and subscribe if you've not done so already. Then make sure you click the bell so that you receive a notification every time we upload a new video at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time on Sunday afternoons. Thanks for taking the time to take care of that. Now, this week's video, we're going to be looking at the conflicted child. The conflicted child. The purpose of this video is to help you to understand what the thought process may be or what the challenges are that your children face in your household if there is domestic violence taking place. Now, as I have stated in previous videos, it's impossible for a child to be exposed to domestic violence, to witness domestic violence, to be aware that it's occurring, even if they don't see it and it's happening in another room. It's impossible for them to experience this and to come away unscathed and to come away completely and totally unaffected. Okay, we know that trauma rewires the brain and that affects the way we view things, what we think our options are, etc., etc. And so a child who is exposed to a toxic, abusive relationship may feel conflicted or confused about who is right and who is wrong, who is responsible for the chaos and the turmoil in the home. It's not unusual for a child to love very much both parties, both parents. And the child's relationship with the abuser may be different from the partner's relationship with the abuser in terms of how that abusive behavior is meted out, if they are directly exposed to it at all. And by that, I mean if they become the target of it themselves. And so it's not unusual for them to love both parties, to love both parents, and to be confused or to be resistant to even acknowledging when it's obvious who the aggressor is and when it's obvious who the catalyst is for the turmoil and the trauma in the home. And so the child may assume the role of negotiator and peacekeeper, going from one parent to the other. And the abuser may take advantage of this tendency by sending messages by way of the negotiating child. And so then I want to encourage you to not utilize that your child in that role because it just keeps them in the middle. Okay. And so the child may assume the role of negotiator, thinking, well, if I might be able to smooth things out and help them to find some peace, and if I can do this and help them to find some agreement, then maybe they won't be so mad and maybe things can be normal. All right. And so the challenge might be then for the victim to recognize that the child who has assumed the role of negotiator may also be very ambivalent about any plan that you may have to leave. They may be totally supportive of it today, and then tomorrow they have second thoughts because they are close to the abuser as well. And they also might be ambivalent regarding who they think is at fault for the atmosphere in the home. They may think, well, it's the parent who's screaming and yelling and breaking things and hitting people and being nasty to everyone in the house. Or they could feel that it's the one who's tolerating all of these antics and seemingly not doing anything about it, or doing things that they know will trigger the abusive behavior. Okay. And so once you see in your child this ambivalence, this going back and forth, you just need to be mindful of that and use wisdom in terms of what information you entrust to them. And then being conflicted can manifest in other ways. In my own experience as a young child exposed to domestic violence, I was conflicted. But I was not conflicted ever about who was right and who was wrong. It was always clear to me that daddy was the aggressor. It was always clear to me that the atmosphere in the home would change when he got home, that the atmosphere in the home would change after he got home, and then it would change again after he started drinking. Um, so it was always clear to me that he was wrong. I understood that how he was treating my mother was wrong. And so I wasn't confused about that. And I never looked at her and thought, well, why don't you do something about it? I understood why she wasn't doing any more than what she was doing. It was clear to me why. Um, and so I wasn't conflicted in ways that a lot of kids are in terms of who's right and who's wrong or blaming the victim. I never blamed my mother. It was clear to me, crystal clear, that he was wrong. Um, and I had, even a very young age, had developed this ability to discern by the way he came through the door from work what kind of evening it was going to be for the rest of us. We had frosted glass in our door. We had like a vestibule or a little entryway, and it had frosted glass on it. And so you couldn't even clearly see who was standing there, but I could tell by his silhouette as a young child, the tilt of his head. I could tell by the way he held his shoulders what kind of night we were going to have. Allow me to give you the backstory. We know that domestic violence occurs in a cyclical fashion. The cycle may look a little different from house to house in terms of duration and intensity and all of that. It might be a year between incidents, it might be 6 months, it might be 3 months, it might be every day, it might be weekly, it might be bi weekly. So it can differ from home to home. What doesn't change is that it is, in fact, a cycle. Um, And so another name for it is the cycle of violence, okay? So often the times of tension and aggression and escalated abuse are interspersed with times of happiness and peace and joy and, family bonding and family trips and family photos and all of that. It can be interspersed with that. Or sometimes the abuse can be so bad and be so intense when it is escalating that just the mere absence of active escalation in that moment feels like happiness, peace, and joy. Okay. So it can be that the respite from the intense trauma brings such relief that nothing even needs to replace it in terms of family trips and family bonding, et cetera, et cetera. You're just excited that you're not getting cursed out, beat up, strangled. You're just excited about the absence of all of that. Okay. Why is this so powerful? Because it reinforces the abuser's hold on the partner and on the rest of the family. It's kind of intoxicating. The relief that is felt when the abuse is abated, even just for a little bit. There's something intoxicating about it. Um, And there's definitely something intoxicating and exhilarating about the gifts and the family bonding and all those things that you want to do as a family that you can't do as a family when the abuser is raging, right? And so now all of a sudden you get to do all those things. Maybe you get to go to Disney, you get to go to Six Flags, you get to go to the beach, you get to go to the movies as a family, and you do all these family things until you hit that place in the cycle where the abuser is raging again, and then it's off to the races. Because of that, it makes it difficult for a victim to even gather the wherewithal to leave because it's like intermittent reinforcement, which is the most powerful reinforcement you can ever experience. It's kind of like gambling, any other addiction. You don't win all the time, but you win just enough to keep you gambling, right? Um, People who struggle with drugs, they're chasing that first high. They'll never experience it again, but they keep hoping that they're going to be able to experience it again. All right. And so in our case, my mother was protective of us. And a lot of times she wouldn't fight back. Um, she would assume a protective posture, but she wouldn't hit back or anything like that. And when I look back, I can understand that her hope was that the violence would abate and that it would not be translated to the children in the home, that she would just kind of absorb it, let it run its course, and maybe he will calm down and he will stop. I was conflicted in that I was fiercely protective of my mother, but I was close to my father. Now, let's go back to the previous examples that I gave you. Daddy could come home, he could be mean and nasty and horrible, but he always dressed to the nines. He always looked really good. We lived in a nice house. It was beautifully furnished, newly renovated. Um, he had a good government job and he was like Dapper Dan. He was always smelled good, very cordial to everybody that didn't live in the house. Okay, so if you met him outside, you would think you were looking at a whole different human after that door closed. Okay, we didn't even try to tell people because we knew they wouldn't believe us. Okay, so but he never really directed his wrath at me, and I think my siblings told me later as we became adults that they felt that I was his favorite, which I thought was interesting because I would stand toe to toe with him sometime and defend my mother and protect my mother and put my body between his body and her body sometime when he was trying to go off. And I was young, like 9 or 10. And I would stand up to him. So it was confusing to me that I could be his favorite. But we had a lot in common. He thought that education was important. My siblings were teenagers and they had other things on their mind. So they would bring home grades that were so or not good at all. And then I'm coming in the door with A's. And there's a reason for that too. Okay. Um, and so I would bring home A's, and the teachers all liked me, and I enjoyed learning, and I enjoyed reading. And Daddy would read the newspaper, and I would lay on my little tummy in the living room floor, and I would read the comic strips. And if I didn't know what a word was, he would tell it to me. And so we bonded over things like that. But I knew he was dead wrong the way he treated my mother. Um, Looking back on that, the A's may have been my wanting his approval. I think the fact that I bonded with him over those things gave me more leeway than my siblings would have had in terms of standing up to him. I think he didn't have a violent reaction to that from me because we had these other things that we shared. He would take me everywhere with him. He would take me to baseball games. He'd take me to the park. He'd take me to go get water ice. He'd take me to the zoo. He'd take me to bars and speakeasies. You know what a speakeasy is? A speakeasy is one of those places that looks like a regular house, but it's not really a regular house because people are in there drinking and selling liquor and they're not supposed to. And there was like a secret knock. I remember that he had to knock on the door a certain way, and then this little peephole would fly open, and then we go into the speakeasy. He'd give me a snack and sit me in a little chair. But when I look back, I realized that he used those times to undermine my mother. And he would take me places that she didn't approve of. And then there'd be an argument about the fact that he took me to the bar with him. And so I think a lot of times, in retrospect, I think a lot of times he took me with him to infuriate her and to undermine her and to kind of remind her that she didn't have total control over what happened in the house and with the kids. And so being conflicted as a child can look multiple different ways. Now, there were times when he would become physically aggressive with my mother, and I would create a diversion. I would do something that I knew he didn't approve of, and I'd do it really, really loud, and that would distract him, and he would come after me. I would have him chasing me through the house. And the whole point was, I never thought I could beat him, but I felt like I could eat up his time, and it would give her time to position herself in a way that was more favorable to her. If he'd been hitting her or choking her or whatever he was doing, he couldn't chase me and choke her at the same time. That was my thought process, and I was 9 years old. Okay, so it's not possible to deal with that and to figure out how to navigate that as a child and be unaffected by it. And so what I want you to understand is children can be conflicted about who's right and who's wrong. They can be conflicted because they genuinely love both parents. They can be conflicted because there are things that the abuser does with them that they can bond over. I mean, and not in an inappropriate way. And I'm not talking about sexual abuse or anything like that. My daddy's not. He's not guilty of that. But he was mean and nasty to my mother, and he wasn't mean and nasty to me. And he tolerated me standing up to him. And on the surface, you might think, well, that's awesome, but it was very confusing. It's very confusing because I believed that he loved me, but he was nasty to her. And I couldn't make any sense out of that. And that affects the way you move through life later and how you look at relationships later. And it affects your ability, even your desire to trust others later. Okay, so I've done a lot of work over the years, not just with clients, but even, with myself. And so I'm grateful to the Lord for the understanding that He's given me about the things that transpired back then. But I recognize that as I got older and I became a teenager, still being conflicted, okay, whoever this is for. We left my father. My mother shared with me that we were leaving 2 days ahead of time. She told me not to tell my younger sister because she was more anxious, and my mother was concerned that she might inadvertently say something that would alert my father that we were leaving. So she had this whole plan set in motion. My mother was amazing. She had this whole plan set in motion. My cousins came in. When my father left for work, I started packing boxes. I started packing the house up. When they came, they started loading stuff on the truck. And in a couple of hours, we were out of there, out of there. Okay. But I was still conflicted. My mother was afraid of my father, and she should have been because he was very scary and very dangerous. But looking back, and I'm just being transparent, I can see where I made decisions because of trauma bonding that were very dangerous and very, very risky. I would sneak over and go visit my father as a teenager, which was really dangerous. It was really dangerous. And I certainly don't advise any young person that may see this video, don't do that. That was dangerous. It really was. Looking back, I can see why I did it. She was terrified. My mother was terrified of him even knowing where we were. There were times when he would come to my school when I was in high school. Um, and my friends, I had a tight circle of friends, they would tell me, your dad's out front. Your dad's out front. So I would go out the back door of the school. He would come to the school so that he could follow me home and figure out where we lived. I knew what he was doing. We were close enough that I understood how he thought. I knew he wanted to know where we lived. I knew my mother was afraid. I didn't want her to be afraid, and I didn't want her to be at risk. And so I would get on the wrong bus on purpose and ride all over the city of Philadelphia on the wrong bus with him following behind. I can see him in his car following the bus that I'm on. I know I'm on the wrong bus. He doesn't know I'm on the wrong bus. And then I time it. We get to a busy intersection. I jump off the bus and catch a bus going in the opposite direction. And it still might not be the right direction. So I would just be riding around until he got tired of trying to figure out what bus I got on. And so those are the kinds of things that I would do in an attempt, a misguided attempt, to have a relationship with my father and my mother. Okay, so understand that children have a hard time separating those things, and kids process it and they respond to it differently. So be patient with them, get them in to counseling, keep the lines of communication open with your children. Understand that they are trying to figure out how to navigate whatever it is that they have witnessed and whatever it is that they have experienced. Also, don't isolate, okay? So we've been talking about the conflicted child, and I really just wanted you to understand what that might look like, um, even years after you've left the abuser, if that's what you've done. Because I know that understanding our why helps us to more accurately determine what our real options are. This is Apostle Cheryl, Judas Roy Domestic Violence Awareness Initiative. I hope that this video has been helpful to you. You be safe out there. Blessings to you.